Hey, hi, I'm Orange. Hey, the slides. Yes. Yeah, I'm Orange, and thanks for having me. Next, I will present this a 3 years tale of hacking, blah, 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 a long title. Hope you enjoy it. First, regarding today's talk, there is a new thing I want to experiment with. Usually, talks about the vulnerability research always end with a success. Of course, if it wasn't a success, it wouldn't be accepted by conferences. However, for today's talk, I want it to be more than just a showcase. I would like to share more about my thoughts during the research, and I would like to focus more on the paths I have tried, the failures I have experienced, and my own reflections. Maybe it could be some references to your next hacking. Also, this is a great excuse for me to organize my workspace. I believe many of us have this situation, having a lot of nameless files such as a.py, b.py, or test.py during a research. So this is a good opportunity for me to merge everything into a talk. Okay, who am I? I'm Orange, and currently I'm the principal security researcher at DevCore. I have spoken at many top hacking conferences and got awards such as the Pwn2Own Champion and Pwn2Own Awards. So why I am targeting Sonos? Back to 2020, I was stuck at a big target and get tired of reviewing a lot of code. I would like to having something different, and the Pwn2Own came up. I picked a target that no one bragged before. That's the initial reason. This is the schedule for our first year. We start to review the Sonos just 2 weeks before the registration deadline. Because we didn't have the physical device, our initial attempts are based on black box. We have several attempts such as parsing the web, search the firmware on the internet, and even try to exploit its update mechanism. The web is the most straightforward attack surface. However, since we are based on black box, most of the information are based on the internet or by the tool like Dearbuster. We know the web is mainly composed of 2 parts. The first part is for debugging, such as the status shows the information and a password protected unlock and the developer mode for debugging. The other part is UPnP, which contains a lot of soap operations, allows the developers to control the speaker, such as playing music, turning up the volume, or controlling the alarm clock. This is one of the debugging page. Looks interesting, right? Unfortunately, there isn't any simple bug, such as the command injection. Yes, Orange use command injection is not very effective. I'm pretty confident for this result. But if you truly find another simple bug here, feel free to ask me for a free beer by this presentation. Regarding the SOAP operation, there's actually an open source project called Soco that lets you control Sonos by API directly. For example, you can turn up or turn down the volume, playing music from an URL, or even grab the information from the track list. Of course, since Sonos trusts everyone from the internet by default, without a firewall, you can turn up someone's volume to the max and play some annoying music remotely. While exploring the API, we noticed a SOAP operation called begin software update. The API has an user-supplied update URL, and we try to give it to our own server to see what would happen. And surprisingly, we receive an HTTP request that comes from the user agent wget. Using a black box approach is always wasting time. To break this situation, we have to get a firmware first. We found several firmwares on the internet. However, most of them are old and outdated. The newer firmwares are encrypted and could no longer be analyzed by Beamwork. The latest plaintext firmware is 45.1, which is roughly from 2 years ago. Okay, even so it was from 2 years ago, we still had the binary at least. We reversed the old binary and learned the mechanism works as follows. When the web server receives the begin software update, it first invokes the upgrade binary for subsequent processing. The binary then asks wget to fetch the corresponding URL and pipes the content to standard out and pass it. We proposed several attacks against this mechanism. First, since we can use wget to access any URL, we tried SSRF first. However, we cannot find any good local service to exploit. Also, given that wget was used, our next idea is to check if there are any past vulnerabilities in wget we can leverage. But sadly, we didn't find any. We also developed some firmware attacks, such as backdooring the firmware or having a downgrade attack. Both attacks failed because the Sonos used an RSA to protect the backdoor and used a hash to prevent it from the downgrading attack. So here is the code for you. If anyone here can crack this hash, please let me know. Maybe we can share the prize at Pwn2Own next year. We failed all attempts, and eventually we shift our attention to the firmware parser. Since the upgrade binary operates as a standalone binary, it feels like playing a classic CTF challenge. And indeed, we discovered a buffer overflow on it. We explored it on our local environment successfully. However, for some reason, we couldn't get it right on the latest firmware. We get stuck in this situation, adjust the offset blindly, and couldn't figure out why we failed until the competition ended. So to sum up our first year, we managed to have an exploit works on the firmware from 2018. However, it's useless against the latest version. Looking back to our first year, I believe we made fair progress, especially considering that we only had 2 weeks. The only thing it could be better, I guess, is my speed in reverse engineering, especially in C++. It could be faster. I should enhance it in the future. Having discussed the first year, let's move on to the second year. You might be wondering that why would you focus on the same target again? First, not getting any RCE on my chosen target feels like a lose, and I don't like it. The other reason is that Synactive released a detailed article that explained how to use hardware attacks to dump the memory before the competition started. I'm totally not a hardware guy, so I can learn a new skill and understand the mystery we failed last year. Sounds very great. So this time, we bought equipment early and allocate full 3 months to prepare for this competition. For the hardware component, we need a USB 3380 evaluation board to perform the DMA attack. Also, these boards are actually sold out on the internet, but luckily, one of the resellers is based on our country, Taiwan. I just give a phone call, pay the money physically, and got it within 24 hours. Regarding the setup, since I am a hardware newbie, I spent an entire week and still couldn't get it right. The first problem I have is why there is no response when I plug on my computer. At that point, I even suspected that I bought a broken device. Yeah, the cat is cute. I get stuck for entire week, and finally, I came across a comment from the author on the GitHub issue, stating that the USB interface of the hardware is disabled by default. To use it, you have to fetch the firmware from another port first. After identifying the root cause, let's fetch the USB. The initial challenge was finding the adapter. In this case, a mini PCIe to micro USB, which proved to be difficult since most modern devices no longer use mini PCIe. I even took apart my own laptop, but only find the M.2 interface. After having further research, I learned that the mini PCIe were primarily used in laptops from the 2010s for the wireless card. So to continue this task, I borrowed a ThinkPad T430 from my friend. This is the ThinkPad that I borrowed from my friend. After removing the wireless card, we finally have the interface of mini PCIe. I plug it to my computer to fetch the firmware excitedly. But suddenly, an error message shows that the ThinkPad has a whitelist for the mini PCIe devices. The BIOS would only accept the hardware from its allow list. We can bypass this whitelist by flashing our own BIOS image. However, to do that, we have to jailbreak the BIOS first. This in turn requires downgrading the BIOS to an older version that has known vulnerabilities. After all the hard work, my Windows finally recognized the hardware, and I successfully got a local root shell through the DMA attack. The entire process takes almost a week, and our vulnerability research just began. With the local shell, we have the binary can reverse finally. We first tried some straightforward bug hunting without too much thinking. For example, we quickly reverse all implementation of the debugging path, look for parastatical system commands, and check for all unsafe string operations to see if there are any simple overflows. All these attempts are failed, but even so I claim that I have checked everything. I still overlook some bugs. So don't trust anyone who tells you that they have checked everything and find no bugs. Without any success, I decided it's time to really use my brain. Firstly, consider that Sonos is a music player. It must support a bunch of media formats. And actually, most of the media parsers are built upon open source projects. Given Given the complexity of the media formats, I'm pretty sure that fuzzing could find bugs. However, I choose not to use fuzzing because I prefer finding bugs by my own eyes more. It's just my personal preferences without any right or wrong. We then turned out our focus on how Sonos handles the metadata. This type of information isn't typically handled by pre-existing open source projects. It may all be done manually, which really caught my attention. So in my opinions, instead of learning little, reviewing the boring open source projects, diving into their handmade code give me more insights to know their coding style. Follow this standard, let me uncover my first bug. It's located in the part where Sonos passes the metadata for the unpack.ts format. Here's the IDA-Pro decompiler result. As you can see, it first reads a byte and uses it as the length of the second read to fill the buffer. So theoretically, if the buffer has been defined to be less than 0x100, there would be a overflow. There would be a buffer overflow. We checked the buffer in IDA-Pro. It seems to have only 0x0. Everything looks great. However, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get it crashed. It was only when we used GDB we realized that before the second read, the program would increase the stack pointer based on the length we got from the first read. So actually, the IDA-Pro decompiler result is a bit wrong. The real code probably involved the dynamic state allocation by the function alloca. Therefore, no matter how much length the buffer uses, this code is not vulnerable. So configuration, we have our first fake bug. Here I would like to highlight a typical flowchart of a vulnerability researcher's daily life. While doing the research, you will see a lot of hope first, and then realize that there's simply no bug. And when you just think everything is over, or you grab another hope again, and the hope is still a fake bug, you still get nothing. But even so, you still can't give up because all the struggles help you understand the system more, and they are all the necessary part to finding the real bug. Anyway, after some time and effort, we defined the real bug. This time the bug was in the metadata parser of the MP3's ID3 tag. Here's a simple structure of an ID3 tag. An ID3 can have many frames, and each frame stores different information, such as the artist, the comment, or the track info. The frame size shows the length of the frame data below. And in the MP3 standard, the frame data should be a string. So to read the string, we saw the null byte. The developer at Sonos decreased the frame size by 1 without any checks. They forgot to check the condition that the size is 0. So there's an integer on the floor here. Of course, it's not that simple to reach this on the floor. You have to set several flags to ensure that the MP3 parser is in the synchronization mode to trigger the bug. And regarding the exploitation, it's not too difficult. This integer on the floor can be converted into a stack buffer overflow directly. And the subsequent exploitation is easy. Even your cat can do this. Since there is no PIE or stack canary, we can just replace the GOT of the string case compare with the system by RP. Really easy. Okay, to conclude our second year, firstly, identify a good attack service can really save your time. Just like our entry point, which is based on the handmade parser entirely. However, in construct to the good attack service, I might spend too much time on the wrong path. I'm talking about the setup of the hardware here. I think try and error is fine, but try and error blindly is not. So my takeaway is it's better to spend a little time first understanding the basics instead of try and error blindly. It can avoid unnecessary detours. Another reflection is, did I give out the fuzzing too early? Because another thing that at the same year exploited the bug in the media parser, which seems to have been fuzzable. And the final thought is always read the menu first. If I have done this earlier, I wouldn't spend an entire week wondering whether the device was broken or not. Moving on to the third year of the Pwn2Own. You might be wondering, why did I choose the target again? The reason this time is pretty simple. I was blinded by the money completely. Last year, we just spent 1 month to earn about 16,000 US dollars. I thought that the third year would follow the same easy way to be rich. But please allow me to give a spoiler. The third year was not easy at all. We struggled with this target for a full 3 months. Before the competition started, I met a friend from the NCC group at HitCon 2022. We chat together and he said, "Hey, did you know that Sonos has enabled all the binary protections now?" What? We then checked the latest binary and shit. The exploitation becomes much harder now. Okay. In our third year, we continue to explore the good attack service we have last year. And quickly, I find another issue. Last year, the bug was found in the metadata parser of MP3. And this year, it was MP4. In the MP4 standard, all metadata stored in a container called box. MP4 can have several boxes, and every box has the size, type, and the box data. While parsing the box FTYP, the developer used the box size to allocate a buffer from the stack and read the data into it directly. Here we have an arbitrary size stack allocation. Compared to the fake bug we discussed before, it seems to be more exploitable. Here is the stack layout while parsing the box. As you can see, the return address is right below the local variables. And at this moment, our stack point is on the top of the local variable. So to allocate the memory from the stack, is pretty much like this. Subtracting from the stack pointer, we take the unused part to serve as an allocated buffer. And then the box parser performs the operation on this newly buffer. And once the function ends, the stack pointer is promptly pulled back, making everything we wrote as garbage. This doesn't affect any local variable or return address at all, like this. So this arbitrary size stack allocation seems useless at the first glance. But if you think about it from a higher perspective, since the entire program operates as a multi-threading system, and each thread has its own stack. Given that our stack allocation size is a 32-bit integer, can we jump a bit far from the current stack? If by any chance there is another thread stack above us, we can override their stack. For example, we allocate a huge size across several memory pages and write 4 bytes. After the write, we close the connection immediately. When we close the connection, the stack point would jump back and continue the program. So if we can control the allocation size precisely, it's a pretty powerful vulnerability. Actually, we call this type of vulnerability the stack clash. So we have a stack clash, and the next challenge is to convert this vulnerability into read and write primitives for further exploitation. Due to the time constraints, here we skip over several details, such as the unpredictable stack layout or the side effects of the stack clash. Today, I only want to highlight one special technique detail. When the stack clash is happening, all other threads are still running and changing their stack frames. That means finding the right moment to do the write is very important, or the program will be crashed. We recall that the NSLOOKUP feature in the debug page before. By reverse engineering, we realized that the feature works by calling the system code getHost by name. So an idea popped up in my mind. Could we just run a DNS server on our own and delay the response? During the delay, the code stack would surely be hanging on the getHost by name, giving us full control of the time to write. So using this approach, we can lick the best edges and gain the PC control successfully. Everything is good. We bypassed all the protections and complete our exploit on September 19. I remember that day was our research team's meeting, and I was showing casting and explaining how elegant my exploit was. And the next day, Sonos released an update that patched my bug. Yes. So here I would like to circle back to the life of vulnerability researcher I mentioned before. There should be one more stage. That's when your bug was patched silently. All right, we still have 2 months at least. We can find another bug if needed. Originally, I planned to find another bug in our good attack service. However, after a detailed investigation, it seems that we have unearthed most of the vulnerability here. This forced me to consider other potential attack surfaces. Given that Sonos relies on open source heavily, we shift our focus to the integration part of open source projects. Whenever an open source project is introduced into an existing system, there still needs some good code to combine them together. So if the developer do not fully understand the intent of the library, the chance of mistakes should be high. Sonos rely on XML for data exchange heavily. So our first target is the XML parsers. Sonos used an open source project called libxpad. Given that the library is a well-known library that should be extensively fast by the community, we can assume that the implementation is good. However, what about the use of the library? It's not just using the library is not just about calling the function. You have also to write the corresponding callback to handle the data by yourself. And I feel that the callback may be a good place to find the bugs. Here is the callback written by the developer at Sonos. You can notice how they are handling the tags, the block and the parent. Whenever it meets the block tag, it may lock some fresh memory and fill with the next parent tag. While they did put a limit on the callback, this restriction is only applied on the block tag. So this is probably the XML the developer is supposed to have. One block paired with several parents, and the other paired with other parents. And once the number of the blocks reach the limit, it stops processing. However, the developer did not aware the XML like this way. Put all the blocks recursively. So when it comes to fill the value in the parent tag, an out-of-bound write happens. Here we skip over several boring details, such as the OOB write dereferences twice, and we cannot use any non-UTF-8 characters because of the XML standards. We overcome all of them and have an arbitrary write now. But the problem is, Sonos has enabled all the protections. Even we have the ability to write anywhere, we still don't know where to write. So we still need an information leak to know where to write. We revisited all the string operation and find an oversight bug that we missed in last year. The return of smprintf can sometimes be larger than the size you provided. So if the program assumes that the return will not exceed the buffer size, it can lead to issues. Here is the case in the SSDP broadcasting. Sonos used the return of the smprintf as the package size directly. That leads to an information leakage. Anyway, we have an out-of-bound write and information leakage. Everything is in my control now. We chat all together on October 18, and oh my God, Sonos released another update on the next day. We checked the update. The good news is that the function of the outbound write is still there. However, no matter how we tried, we could not reach the vulnerable function. With a deeper analyzing, we realized that Sonos had made a major change on its entire architecture, and they removed all the entry points to the function with the out-of-band write, precisely. So even the variable function is still here. We could no longer to reach it. Such timing are just too incredible to be a coincidence. We recall that in our first year we observed that Sonos will upload the crash dump. But we don't think it's a problem because if they checked this before, we could not win the competition so easily. But at this moment, this is the only explanation that Sonos started to analyze every crash dump actively. We also asked some friends afterward, and indeed, they have the same feeling with me. Well, it's fine. We still have more than 1 month. We can consider this as a course which costs 1 month. Just accept it, and there always will be other bugs. And 1 month passed. We have almost run out of all ideas and find nothing. We have several unsuccessful attempts. All of them are failed. We even started to give fuzzing a try. We have 2 weeks left and still nothing find. Since all of their source code are on the GitHub, I even consider hack into their GitHub account. All right, let's calm down. Take a deep breath. Let's review the bugs we have so far. And consider what's the root cause behind this bug. And how did the bug appear in the development circle? And what scenario the developers makes the mistake that results to these bugs. And we know the root cause and the scenario. The most important thing is how to find a variant. During this review process, we find a failure that is super interesting. Did you remember the fact bug we mentioned before? The size of the second read is decided by the byte received from the first read, allowing us to write up to 255 bytes. However, since the buffer used the dynamic allocation from the stack, we cannot exploit it. And I also mentioned that about 1 month ago, Sonos released an update that patched my XML bug and have changed their architecture entirely. The architectural change also turns my fact bug into a real bug. Originally, maybe due to the poor regression test, the buffer size is a fixed value now. And as you can see, the buffer size is 184 now, and yes, we can write up to 255 bytes. Yeah, we have a very small stack overflow and can exactly override the return address. And of course, this time, we remember to cut off the cable. Yeah, this is also the vulnerability we demonstrated at the Pwn2Own 2 years ago. It's time to share some reflection on my last year. First of all, I'm really glad that I didn't give up until the last moment. However, I still made some mistakes. The first I want to reflect is my coverage on binary-related bugs, such as the smprintf bug I have overlooked. This tells me that I have to revisit my methodology again. The second reflection is during the attack surface analysis, the name SMB in the open source project live SMB2 really scares me. That makes me to have a mistaken assumption that it was a complex library, so I did not dig into it. By the end of the competition, all of other teams exploit the bug in that open source project. I think this should be the really short bolt for Sonos. And the last thing I need to reflect is the OPSec. I should set up the lab environment properly before the competition, so to avoid the crash dump upload. Okay, small conclusion. The first, I think the persistence is the key. I always remember when I was young, I said I will hack into Facebook someday in the future. It took me 4 years to finally do it. So how long could you persistent on the same things? Just circling back, if I had given out the Sonos in the first year, this talk wouldn't be happened. I will not discover or I hadn't pushed myself until the last moment. I will not discover that the fake bug becomes the real bug. And this story wouldn't be a success. However, while persistence is the key, I believe that persistence on the right path is more important. The right path we are talking about here is the right attack surface. To give an overview to all the bugs we have over the past 3 years, half of them are related to a good attack surface, where the hand-made metadata parser. So putting all together, please don't give up until you find the right path. It feels like facing a really tough boss in a game. Even if you cannot defeat the boss, spending at least 1 hour every day still have the benefits. Whenever you have a new idea, try to see if it can be applied in your target. Even you failed, you still learned one more path that is not worth taking at least. The last, I want to share a quote with you. That's from the game Celeste, which got the Games of Impact of the Game Award 2018. Be proud of your death count. The more you died, the more you are learning. This game not only won the Games of Impact, but also the best independent games. It's also the top 1 game in my mind. The game's design in how to get a sense of achievement is really textbook level. I truly recommend this to those who are stuck at something. It might become another source of some kind of achievement for you. So keep going. Okay, this is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. Thank you again for being here. Thanks.